A mother writes to me and says, today, my father, the father of the mother, shouted in anger at my 3-year-old son, Jake. So this grandfather shouts at his 3-year-old grandson. Yeah, every time an adult shouts at a child, it's inexcusable. Short of, the child's about to step out into interstate traffic. Otherwise, no. It's just, in fact, it's potentially deadly emotionally. Not exaggerating. As an actor who's now dead, Alan Rickman, said in an older movie called Robin Hood, at one point in the movie, when somebody did something that was a rather bold statement, he said, hurtful statement actually, he said, a little inappropriate, don't you think? Anytime we raise our voice at a child, it is a little inappropriate, don't you think? Mom continues, or in this case, I'll just talk to her. You continue. My son, Jake, was clearly hurt when my father yelled at him. And I didn't take it so well either. Yeah, I'll bet. Understandable that you would feel anger toward your father. He had far more of a negative effect on your own life than you sometimes give him credit for. And I know something about him and you, in part because he looked fairly innocent compared to your mother, who was more dramatically angry. So now here you get a vicarious opportunity to be annoyed with him at the way he actually treated you. And, of course, treated your son, because it's now becoming more obvious to you. You continue. Apparently, Jake, my son, was about to touch some dog poop by the swimming pool. And my dad had told him off and said, don't play with dog poop, it's dirty. And then my son, Jake, went to put the dog poop in the pool. How could you resist that at age 3? What does dog poop do in a pool? So then my dad shouted at him and told him not to do that. And this is when Jake looked shocked and hurt. All kinds of good lessons in here for Jake and for you too. You continue. Now I wonder what I should do when dad is unloving to my son. That's a really good question. Should I say something to dad? Say something to Jake? In the past, I have told dad not to speak to Jake in unkind ways. I told him confidently and directly, but probably not from a place of peace. Probably not, because of your past history with him. You feel hurt when he does that, and so you would react defensively in some way. You continue. More recently, I've just let his unloving behaviors just go. I just haven't said anything when he's unkind to my son. And it happens a lot. And I'm wondering if there's just no way to teach my dad, because it's so ingrained and obviously comes from deep-seated pain and fear. Just letting this happen is no good. Don't do that. Why? Because then Jake learns that his own grandfather will hurt him, and he further learns that you won't do anything about it. So you become a perpetrator. He loses trust in you, and he feels small and worthless himself. This is actually a really terrible situation when your dad does this. You look bad, he looks bad, Jake feels bad, awful. So what can you do about it? It sounds like you've already tried to teach your dad and that didn't work, so we're going to give that up. But you can say something for Jake's benefit, not your dad's. So let's do this for real. Let's suppose you're out at the pool again, and Jake is about to put poop in the pool, and your dad yells at Jake. Now, I'm not telling you what to do, but I am showing you that there's a choice. Modify the choice all you want to. You could try something like this. You speak to Jake, not your dad, although your dad's there, so he's going to hear this. You speak loudly enough, in fact, that you make sure your dad can hear this. You say to your son, Jake, is it okay to put poop in the pool? Well, he's going to either say no or shake his head no. He knows at 3, he's been told this before. It's just an irresistible boy thing, poop in the pool, knock things up, climb up on things, knock things over, jump in mud. We little boys just do that. So he nods his head or he shakes his head no, and you say, okay, so you know that. You know it's not okay to put poop in the pool. What could you do with the poop that you're holding? And give him a chance, just wait. And if he goes, you go, you know the answer, so I'll just wait. What could you do with it? If you're not annoyed, he won't freeze. He won't become afraid. He knows the answer. I promise. He's heard it before. He'll say some version of, well, I could throw it on the grass, or which is where he got it probably in the first place. I could throw it in the trash. I could, whatever. And you say, and poop is just kind of extra stinky, isn't it? I mean, and you can convey that with your face. And the kid's going to love it that you're playing with him. Well, yeah, it is kind of stinky. So you say, so other people wouldn't want you to touch them if you've picked up poop, would they? He's shaking his head. Yuck. But you're not bad to pick it up. Because see, that's what he's hearing from the tone of voice of your father. No, it just stinks. And in the pool, it would make a real mess. So you wouldn't want to throw it in the pool where people are going to be. See, you're teaching them a principle. Dog poop, you want to play with it all by yourself and clean up, go for it. But you don't put it in the pool because people are there, and you don't play with it, and then you go touch people. So he's learning, I get to make my choices. This is huge stuff you're teaching. This isn't about dog poop. You get to make your own choices, but you don't get to make choices that affect other people negatively. See? Now, remember, Grandpa's already yelled at him. So you say, did you like it when Grandpa yelled at you about the poop? Remember, Grandpa's sitting there. You're just ignoring him. And the kid's definitely going to have a reaction to that. He'll either shake his head or he'll cry. Take your pick. And then you say, Grandpa was just scared for a second. He didn't know what to do. So he yelled at you. You know that you remember that there's some times that mommy does that sometimes too, doesn't she? Meaning you. Sometimes I yell at you and then I say, oh, I was wrong to yell at you. You're going to get an enthusiastic nodding of the head from the kid about this point because you are listening to him, playing with him, teaching him an important life principle, and in a healthy way, giving him the strength to not be hurt by his grandpa without rescuing him or saving him or making him feel pathetic or helpless or weak. He's going to nod his head. And you say, well, then good lesson. Perfect. He'll get it. You're loving and teaching him. Notice, you're not criticizing Grandpa. No, Grandpa just got afraid. And then Grandpa did what mommies sometimes do. And as you teach all of this, both Jake and Grandpa will get the message. It's very cool. I've done this myself. I've helped who knows how many other people do it. It works. Loving and teaching works better than everything else. New subject. A man writes, over the last few days, I've been feeling pretty overwhelmed, drained and triggered by my ex. And I'm guessing she really loves that because she keeps doing it. And you keep letting her. It's her way of feeling powerful. She didn't quite bleed you to death while you were married, so now she wants to finish the job. She wants to keep letting your blood out until your heart quits beating. You continue. She'll call social services and report me for doing stuff with our 2 kids that just isn't true. Well, vengeful people are not affected by what's true. We share custody, but then she knows that if she reports me to social services, she knows that they have to investigate. And it causes me a lot of trouble. Time off work, sometimes appearances in court. Well, there's no evidence, and so it goes away. But with enough reports, the legal system begins to treat me like I must have done something. Yeah, that's really kind of true. You get accused, and enough people eventually say, well, you had to have done something. So you ask, what can I do? I've tried talking to her. Yeah, I can imagine how that went. I could go to court and try to get full custody of the kids. And I can imagine how that would go too. So what do I do here? I've never heard a single word about her from you or other people. Now, I have the benefit here of knowing the person who's writing me the letter. Never heard a single word about her that didn't confirm that she is empty and afraid to the point where she's incapable of behaving with any degree of sanity. She's miserable, and she loves to spread it around. Where's your mistake? You keep believing that somehow there's something you can do to convince her to be reasonable. You need to remember that she's nuts, and that's why you left her. So what do? You love your kids. You stay out of your ex's way, and if she reports you, eventually, yes, there are people who are going to look at you funny. Eventually, social services goes, I know unnumbered people who work in social work and child social services, and eventually they identify the crazy complainers, roll their eyes, come out to your house and go, are your kids bleeding? No, thank you. They fill out their report and they go home. But you have to stop expecting anything at all from her, your ex. She was crazy when you married her. She was crazy the whole time you were married to her. She was crazy when you divorced her. She's crazy now. She's going to stay crazy and vengeful. If she abuses the joint custody, as in expenditure of money, not paying you half of what how these child custody documents go. If she abuses that, you simply keep records of every time that she's late delivering the kids, or she doesn't pay her portion of dental bills or whatever. Just keep a record. Don't complain to her. She loves it when she can torture you. And then eventually, if it becomes enough of a problem, courts respond to evidence. They're actually bored by animated accounts of how exes are crazy. I have testified in court many times. Judges just hate drama. They hear it all day. But when I pull out my calendar and I say, this happened on this day and this happened on that day, and Your Honor, may I give you a copy of what happened? His Honor is really thrilled to have actual evidence. And then it's over. But quit messing with your ex. Quit trying to change her. New subject. I know a lady who has steadily and quickly grown in her ability to feel loved. And she said she works in a profession where she has clients. She said, one of my clients canceled. So I decided to go over to spend time with my family for exactly the hour that the client canceled, which is pretty smart. When you're not sure, now in this case, you're talking about not the cancellation so much, but spending an hour with your family. The people who are listening wouldn't have known that. Smart that you went over and spent exactly an hour. That was the point of the sentence. When you're not sure how draining your family will be, it's really smart to decide ahead of time how long you'll be there. Why? Because then you don't feel trapped. And what if you get to the end of the hour that you decided to spend with them and you think, I can handle a little more? Don't do it. I mean it. Because there's a sense of confidence, a sense of power, inner power, real power, good power that comes from, I made a decision to do this and I did it. That extra 5 minutes you decide to spend, you'll realize that you didn't keep a commitment to yourself, and the likelihood that you'll become annoyed or afraid is much greater. You continue. When I got there to my family's place, ate pizza with my mom and dad. My dad was apparently acting annoying. I didn't really notice, but my mom said to him, "So what's up with you? Why are you acting like this?" Her tone, as you might imagine, was one of disgust, which I just illustrated. And I guess that explains why I often feel so disgusted with myself. Yeah, you think? She did it so often to you and does it with others that you just got used to it. You got used to it. You didn't consciously notice it, but baby, you still felt it. This is the whole reason PTSD occurs in people, is that 99% of the emotionally traumatic events that happened in our lives, we don't remember them. They didn't even consciously register, partly because of memory and partly because it's just background noise. But we felt them. They injured us semi-silently. And your father probably acted up often as well, because here he was being annoying enough to your mother to get a comment you didn't even notice. So you grew up in a home where there was annoyed, being annoying, being criticized, being told you're disgusting all the time, and you weren't even aware of it till you saw an alternative when you were loved. You continue. I responded that to my mother, he's probably excited that I came to visit and probably just wants some attention. That's pretty clever, actually, to say, to use some humor to attempt to diffuse a conflict rather than getting into the conflict yourself. So you attempted to use some humor. You could also have just said nothing. Either way, I don't have an attachment to which way you handle it, but you did it beautifully. Then, you say, my sister came home and there was peace for about 5 minutes. She and my dad started going at it, yelling at each other, fighting. Yeah, sweet family love. You say, my dad picks on my sister's boyfriend relentlessly and uses her mistakes against her. Then they got in a fight about gas money that he promised he'd give her each week, but so far hasn't given her any of. I realized pretty quickly, I'm not having fun here anymore. And I had nothing to offer that would make things better, even though I said I'd stay for the whole hour. So smart to say that you'd stay for an hour, but that doesn't mean you have to. I found my sister and I said goodbye to my sister. I didn't even say anything to my parents. And she got angry at me for leaving. She said, you can't just say you're going to do something and then not do it. In other words, stay for the hour. From me to you, apparently you are not aware of this rule. The law that says if you've committed to an hour, you have to stay there. There's no such law. You say, so I just walked out of the room. And she followed and said, look, if you want to come out to my car, you can spend some time with me there. So what was she really irritated at? She wanted to spend some time with you. That's what she was really saying. We don't hear people. She says, you can't make a commitment and break it. If she'd been honest, she would have said, oh, I would really like to spend some time with you because I feel more loved when I'm around you than around these crazy people who raised us. She continued, you say, I'll wait out in my car for 5 minutes if you want to come. The lady who's writing this goes out to her sister's car. Before the sister comes, the mom comes out. Then the sister follows. Then the entire house empties to be with me in the car. So we weren't getting along in the house, so everybody follows me out to the car, where we talked for like 20 minutes. My sister complained to my mom, which didn't help her because she just got more angry and victim me. My mom got tired of that, and my dad got tired of the entire thing, and then they just left for the last 10 or so minutes. So I hopped into the passenger seat and told my sister, come sit in my lap. And she did. And I just held her. She complained a little more, and I let her, but I didn't feed it. I didn't feed into the complaining. You're getting pretty smart, kid. I stroked her face, my sister's face, who had just told me that I was breaking the law when I left early. I squeezed her, told her how much I adore her, told her it's never about her when Dad gets mad at her. Finally, she changed the subject to tell me a funny joke and laughed. And I told her one too. I said some more things about how adorable she was, how sweet she was, how much I loved spending time with her. The energy completely changed in that last 10 minutes. She started babbling. And then eventually I really did have to go. I had an appointment. It's really fun bringing love to a situation like that started off badly. Everything changed without my needing to change her. I wasn't being controlling. I was just loving her. And it changed. And she felt the difference. What a choice to be able to make. That is real power. That is what real love can do when just one person in a family decides to live it. Is that cool? New subject. Little background. I know a girl, Rosa, from a massive extended family. I mean, it's a community, the grandparents and the parents and the cousins and the uncles, and sheesh, it's huge. And it's run entirely on control, anger, manipulation, obligation, guilt, drama, and politics. It's a mess. An absolute drama-filled hell of a prison, the entire family. The family elders, mom, dad, uncles, aunts, use guilt, intimidation, anger, hate, and threat of excommunication, because they actually use that word in that family. It's not a religious word. It's like, we're going to throw you out if you don't do what we say, to demand the obedience and even the worship of the younger members of the family. This is not uncommon. I'm also not exaggerating. The family is the ultimate cult in the world. Not religions, not weird groups, not bizarre ceremonial. No, the family. Look it up in the book on PTSD, or post-childhood stress disorder, and look at all the characteristics of cults as defined by organizations, they exist, that define cults. The family satisfies every criterion. In this family, the young are obligated to take care of the older ones, emotionally, physically, financially. And this has utterly destroyed Rosa, the girl I was talking about. Well, girl, she's like 35, but they treat her like she's 4 because she tries to please everybody. She never succeeds, and nobody does. She's stressed out. She can't perform on her job. She thinks nothing of herself because she's just a worthless object to everybody else. And she lets her 16-year-old daughter do whatever she wants. Because if she tries to parent her own daughter, then the entire extended family tells her how she's wrong and they take over. It's a nightmare. You can't have a child raised by 85 people, all of whom have a different opinion. So Rosa tried to cut communication with the family for a while, but the family was predictably hateful, spiteful, sent nasty emails, guilted her with, I guess you don't care if one of us dies. I love the death card. She's very wounded, so sensitive that she runs from any suggestion that she might do anything differently. She's just hypervigilant. And yet she has to do something differently, or she'll lose her own happiness, lose her health. She just smokes and is drinking herself to death to deal with stress. And she's going to lose her daughter to the mess of that family. The daughter's just going to blend into the whole family pathology. I don't do this very often with people, but this lady was being destroyed. If this lady were systematically putting cyanide in her food, I wouldn't suggest that cyanide was bad. I would say, honey, life isn't going to be possible until you quit doing that. And I suggested that until she cut off all contact with her family. Remember, her family is destroying her. I said, nothing's going to change. Now, many people would object, but family's the most important thing. How could this possibly be a loving thing? And she asked that. And here's what I said to her. And it would be useful for many people who are being systematically, consistently drowned by their own families. I said, you have one life, only one. And so far, your family's destroyed it for 35 years. It's not like we're guessing now. For 35 consistent years, you've been destroyed. Would it be ideal if you could trust your family, stay with them, and feel loved by them? Well, duh. But as a direct result of their anger and disapproval, you're not happy. Your daughter is not happy. There's no denying the results. And yet you hang on to the hope that somehow your family will make you happy by loving you. You're insane. Not an insult. It's just insane after 35 years of seeing the results that you think that they're going to change. They're all selfish and angry, and that's all they have to offer you. I'm not criticizing them. That's all they've got. They're really doing their best. They are already drowning. Not really even a metaphor here. Emotionally, they're drowning. They're dying. And you hope that they'll somehow pick you up out of the water and save you. That's never going to happen. It's impossible. Until you decide to stay away from them entirely, stay away from that pool where everybody's drowning and shoving each other's heads under the water, you're going to drown. That's not a supposition. You're already drowning. And every day it gets worse. Drowning people, like your family members, can only accelerate the drowning of other drowning people. They can't help anybody. They can only reach out to save themselves and push somebody else's head under the water. And you do have some wise people in your life now, people who understand what unconditional love is, who can help you out of the water. So you're not trapped. But you choose to wait for all the drowning people to help you. It's like a self-imposed death sentence because you have a way out and you're not taking it. If you don't choose to stay away from them, I know I can't help you. Because after enough times of your refusing help, it's going to become kind of obvious that I need to give up because you already have. You've already given up on the idea of walking out of the jail or getting out of the pool or stopping drowning. Pick any of 100 metaphors. I won't be walking away from you. You've already chosen not to get out of the pool. You've chosen not to take the helping hands that are being offered by quite a few people who are around you. And I would just be choosing to accept your decision. I'd be sad, but it's your life. Now, parenthetically, I wrote that some time ago. And this woman did cut off contact with her family. They were just utterly venomous about it, just insulting and guilting and hateful and mean-spirited. But she stayed away from them. She became happy in her job. She's learning how to be a happy person. She's learning how to be a real mother to her daughter, who's now finally listening to her for the first time ever, because she's not listening to 85 voices, just one of whom is her mother. This lady's entire life is changing because she's separated from her family. Now, what's the event? What's the end game? What's the goal? Eventually, she'll become healthy enough that she can go and visit her family. Probably not stay with them for extended periods of time, but the idea isn't to cut them off. The idea is to get away from the cause of the wounds long enough to heal. And then she can make all manner of choices. New subject. Here's somebody who wrote and said, I'm looking for a loving partner, but first I'm working on being a loving partner. I'm getting closer. People are helping me. And when I think might have found somebody, I'll talk to you about it first, or some other people in real love, so that I'm sure I'm not getting fooled. I'll get your input instead of just getting all excited, because initially dating can be very exciting and then we just go blind. I'll get input instead of getting excited and carried away and self-deceived. Oh, there are a number of people, as in millions of single people, who would do well to memorize this. It's a very wise dating approach. Never, ever date alone, meaning making your own decisions. You don't want other people to control your decisions. That's not the point. But you want to date transparently. So whatever you're thinking or doing on your dates, and I mean everything, you share with somebody you trust has the guts to tell you the truth about what you're doing. Way better to realize that a relationship is unhealthy after 4 dates than after 4 years and 2 kids. Not even close. New subject. A woman on a Skype call with me said, "I'm dead inside." And I said, "Wrong. You're not. You're vibrant, creative, and fun. Those are your gifts. But with your fear and pain, you can't feel all that. You're too busy defending yourself." She said, "Well, so what's wrong with me?" Nothing. Pain and fear are not you. Pain and fear were done to you. And now you have an opportunity, if you wish, to do whatever it takes to eliminate pain and fear so you can be you. Love does that. So what's your job? Find it, feel it, remember it. Now, we're still on the Skype call. I said, "So there's no sense talking. I'll just sit here with you while you remember. While you remember that you've been loved." I stopped speaking. Several minutes went by. It's a long time on a call. She finally smiled. She said, "Well, I remember some of it." I said, "Then remember some more." And I still sat there. And she did. And she no longer felt dead inside. I didn't hit her in the head. I didn't have to go into some long lecture. No, you've already been loved, so I'm going to sit here while you remember that. It's so easy to get distracted by all the things that we have to do, by all the things that are wrong, by all the things that we want and don't have. So much simpler and effective to remember what we do have, to remember that there are people who care about us. New subject. I know a man who has been miserable all of his life, and I know quite a few men like that, but we'll talk about this one. It's not an unusual condition. He learned about real love. He found real love. He began practicing it. And one day he said to me, "This is so hard." I said, "Well, it'd be more accurate to say that this is unfamiliar. And you feel disoriented and lost because it's unfamiliar. But you have so many people who are helping you, and you've seen it work over and over, where your past judgments and behaviors have not worked at all. Whereas this does." He said, "Well, it's still really hard." He was not eager to give up his original stance. Well, sort of. But it's not the principles that are difficult. Not the change in perspective even that's difficult, since the new perspective is true. That's the difference. The new perspective about feeling loved and being loving is true. The universe is built on love. And it's therefore easier, just as solving problems after knowing that 2 + 2 is 4 is easier than trying to solve problems if you believe the premise that 2 + 2 is 5. If you believe the latter, that it's 5, math is going to be much more difficult for you. What you describe as hard is really just the emotional distress and exhaustion that always follow resisting the truth. 2 + 2 is 4 is not hard. Fighting it and saying that it's 5, oh, now that's hard work. It's your resistance that's hard, not the principles. He said, I don't understand. And by now I'm laughing because it's not that he doesn't understand. He doesn't want to understand. He wanted to complain. I said, all right, so a concrete example. You've spent your life trying to do and say the right things so that people will like you. Your whole life, pleasing. That is exhausting, and you've told me that it's exhausting. You've spent almost every waking minute of the day, this is not unusual, and some of your sleeping moments trying to please people and avoid their disapproval. That's really hard work. To now just be yourself without working to please people, without avoiding every possible disapproval, is relatively easy. Being ourselves is the easiest way to live. It's actually the only way to live by far. Far easier for a nail to be a nail than to try to be a gallon of milk. Be yourself. It's easier for a rabbit to be a rabbit than try to be a fish. And the same is true with people. Try to be something other than you are and you'll suck at it. The only thing you'll ever be any good at is you. But until we get rid of pain and fear, we don't know who us is. So being yourself is easier, not hard. What you're finding hard is letting go of all the immediate and predictable rewards that you got from making people happy. You liked them. You let go for a second, but then you immediately reach out to grab hold of the pleasing and the creation of your image. You like it because it's rewarding and it's immediate. It's the letting go and grabbing again that's exhausting. You grab hold of the boat because you're drowning, and then you let go. That's a lot of work. Grabbing, pulling yourself up. For those of you who've never pulled yourself out of the water into a rowboat or a canoe, it's hard work. Much harder is pulling yourself halfway up out of the water and then going back in the water and doing that over and over again. You're going to have no skin on your belly, for one thing, and you'll be worn out, and you're still in the water. Just letting go is a huge shift in your perspective. No denying that, but it's a decision. It's not an effort. This is a tough principle for people to grasp. So if you didn't get it the first time, listen to it again. New subject. When I met Nyla, she was living with her cats in a single room, unemployed, supported by the government, using drugs, unhappy, unhealthy, always at the doctor's office, smoking, drinking, and almost died from the stress in her life. Her doctor told her that. Stress is what nearly killed you. In fact, her heart actually stopped. And she just happened to be in a place where there was a defibrillator. She looked like she'd been burned alive. She was in so much pain. Not exaggerating. She found people to love her. She mostly believed it, that they loved her. Sometimes she forgot, and we all do. She had no job. She complained about that and, of course, stressed about it. She had some kind of professional certification that she acquired much earlier in life. She had allowed that to lapse. She said, well, I can't find a job because my certification has lapsed, because I'm stressed, because I'm sick, because I don't have any money, blah, 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 all the excuses in the world. In other words, I'm lying here dying, and I'll give you an excuse for dying until I'm dead. Essentially what she said. And I said, well, that's one way to go. You could die from excuses, or you could, instead of going out and looking for a job in your field, you could go out and look for a job where you could be a volunteer. I mean, you're being supported by the government anyway. Volunteer doing exactly what your certification is in, but not be paid so you wouldn't have to be certified, gain the skills to recertify, and impress the people where you're working enough that eventually when you get your certification, they'll hire you and pay you. Oh, that'd never work. Well, then I guess you're going to lie there and die. But she did it. She got a volunteer job doing what she was certified to do. Her government benefits continued because they didn't pay her. This is pretty smart. It turned into a real job. She regained her professional certification. She now loves her job. They love her. She's helping people. Turned her life around. She's still stressed, though, because it's a habit. We can become habituated to anything. If sticking beans up our nose felt good, we'd do that. She stressed constantly that she just wasn't good enough, even though everything in her life was working, despite being offered the real job by a supervisor who understood her, supported her, just wanted her to succeed. So one night I talked to her. She had fussed all day and half into the night that the next day her supervisor would be watching her on the job. In other words, assessing her performance, grading her, giving her a performance review. Fussed and worried. She was headed toward actually being so sick because she'd been up half the night that she wouldn't be able to show up for the certification, for the performance review. Well, your performance review, if you don't show up, isn't generally good. And I finally said, stop it. Quit it. Look at the miracle of your life. Look at the miracle of you. You've gone from fear to confidence. Not so much confident right now, but overall, yeah. From pain to happy, from no job to a good job. And you're worried about what exactly? She couldn't answer my question. I said, be yourself. Show up as you, which is what you've been doing as a volunteer, and you'll do fine. Carry in your pocket photos of 4 people who love you a lot. And she has such people. So she made copies off the internet and printed them and stuck them in her pocket. The next day, she wrote after her performance review, she said, I was so calm at work. I felt loved by all those people whose photos were in my pocket. I felt the support of my supervisor. I got my performance review, and it said that I was competent, that I brought an atmosphere of compassion to the workplace, that I'm a pleasure to be around, that I'm calming to the clients we have, and that they're lucky to have me in the job. She said, I roared with laughter as I read this, comparing it to the middle of the night when I was worrying. And I couldn't help it. I don't normally say this, but I did. I said, okay, who was right? Because I told her she could do all of this. Loving made all the difference. I said I was right about not the issues, I was right about you, because I can see you. And when you're in pain, you don't. Worrying, fussing, and fear are not steps to anywhere but unhappiness. You worried for nothing. So there. We all do. We worry about a bad thing. It doesn't happen. So what a waste of happiness to worry. We worry about a bad thing. It does happen. Well, the worry still didn't help. So we wasted that time too, that we could have been happy or perhaps even preparing to prevent the bad thing. Bottom line, in this lady's life, in mine, in yours, worry is not a step. It will never, ever help you. Sometimes I tell you about somebody who had a miserable childhood or a miserable life, kind of like the beginning of the story of the lady that I just talked to you about. But it's impossible to convey how horrifying some of these lives have been. It's amazing that they find any kind of happiness ever. It's amazing that they don't kill themselves. I'm not alarmed at the suicide rate. I'm surprised by it, that it's so low. And even the people who don't have visibly traumatized lives can be severely wounded. In this case, I describe a man, Joseph, whose childhood was so barren of love and direction that it's a miracle that he has any life at all. Now, he didn't experience any kind of physical or emotional trauma that, say, a social services worker would have even noticed. If social services came into his house and did a survey of his family, they'd have walked out going, what are we doing here? This is a normal home. What was the trauma in his life? Just neglect. That's all. Emotional neglect. He was fed, clothed. His father was a social cripple. Didn't know how to do anything. Not with people. His mother was on the computer all day and gave no emotional nourishment to her children. Joseph and his brother grew up with zero sense of worth. None. No social skills. The brother still lives at home with his dad. His brother's now 40-something. Mom's dead. Joseph married an angry, controlling, bitter woman who leaves a path of emotional destruction behind her everywhere she goes. Joseph and his wife have 2 children, both still at home, who are similarly crippled. So they have one abusive parent, her, another neglectful, him, and they're both clueless. But Joseph has been learning about real love. He's been reading, he's been studying in fits and starts. He tries it now and again. It's halting, but it's the best he's got. What's impressive is he doesn't give up. He wrote me the other day. He said, I had an amazing time with my 17-year-old son tonight. He's never written words like that before. He continued, I picked him up from school and he was angry and frustrated with school and pretty much everything, which is the condition this 17-year-old kid lives in all day. No surprise considering how he's been raised. Joseph continues, I pulled into the driveway at home, turned off the engine, looked at him, and I said, tell me. That's so touching I could hardly speak when I read it. Tell me. In other words, it's clear that you're upset. He didn't go into all that. I'm willing to listen to you. In fact, I want to listen to you. And he conveyed all that in 2 words. Tell me. Oh, sweet. Joseph continues. He talked to me there in the driveway for 2 hours. 2 hours for a 17-year-old with his father. Gosh, what father wouldn't kill for an opportunity like that? For 2 hours about everything. And it was amazing because not once did it feel like a chore to me, even though there was lots of stuff that I really have no interest in, the subject. What you did was lovely. You didn't need to be interested in the subject. You listened to him. You loved him. You weren't interested in the subject he talked about sometimes, but you were interested in your son. And he felt it. You continue. I didn't feel worried that I was missing something that I had to do in the house. I didn't feel selfish, which is a relatively new thing for me. I can't think of another time in his entire life, 17 years, where I've ever done this. So I probably never have. He kind of like blossomed like a flower in front of me, and his anger just melted. It was amazing. And the best part is, it made me happy just to listen to him. Well, honey, you just hit a parenting home run. And for all of us who are listening, the single easiest, most important, most imminent thing that we can do to love anybody around us, especially our children, is just to listen. That's what he did. This is loving. He did it. This is how love changes people. Without it, this man could only have continued to raise his son as he was raised, helpless, hopeless, and eventually ending up in a condition where there's just absolutely no way out. After 17 years, this father learned to love his son. Now, there's a long way to go. There's a lot of learning that the father has to do. There's a lot of healing that the son is going to require, but he's begun. And that is a miracle. It's the kind of miracle that we can all experience in our lives just by taking the next one step. That's how it starts. I'll see you in a week.